Hello, everyone, and welcome to English Learning Conversations. I'm Aurora, and today we have a wonderful guest who's going to help us with one of the most important skills in English learning conversation practice. Sophie, please introduce yourself to our listeners.
Hi, Aurora, and hello to all the fantastic English learners listening today. I'm Sophie, and I'm from Canada. I've been teaching conversational English for over 15 years, and my specialty is helping students overcome their fear of speaking and develop natural conversation skills. I'm passionate about conversation practice because I believe that real communication is the heart of language learning. Today, we're going to explore practical ways to improve your English conversation skills. Whether you're a complete beginner or someone who wants to speak more naturally and confidently.
That's exactly what our listeners need, Sophie. Many English learners can read and write quite well, but they struggle when it comes to actual conversations. They feel nervous, they can't think of what to say, or they worry about making mistakes. Let's start with the basics. What exactly is conversation practice, and why is it so important?
Conversation practice is essentially learning to use English in real-time interactive communication with other people. It's different from studying grammar rules or memorizing vocabulary lists because it requires you to think quickly, listen actively, respond appropriately, and express your thoughts clearly under time pressure. Conversation practice is crucial because it bridges the gap between knowing English and actually using English. You can study for years, but if you never practice speaking with real people, you'll always struggle in actual communication situations. It's like learning to drive by reading about cars, but never getting behind the wheel. Theoretical knowledge isn't enough for practical skills.
That's such a perfect analogy. Conversation really is like driving. You need hands-on practice to develop the skill. Sophie, what are the biggest challenges that English learners face when they start practicing conversations?
There are several major challenges that I see consistently with my students. First, there's the fear factor. Many learners are terrified of making mistakes or sounding foolish, so they avoid speaking altogether. Second, there's the speed issue. Conversations happen quickly, and learners often feel like they can't keep up with the pace of natural speech. Third, there's the vocabulary gap. Students might know words individually but struggle to use them naturally in flowing conversation. Fourth, there's the cultural aspect, knowing what to say and when to say it in different social situations. Finally, there's the confidence barrier. Even when students have the knowledge and skills, they doubt themselves and hesitate to participate actively in conversations.
Those challenges are so relatable. I think every English learner has experienced at least some of those feelings. Sophie, how can beginners start practicing conversations when they feel like they don't know enough English yet?
This is such an important question because many beginners think they need to study for months or years before they're ready for conversation practice. But that's actually backwards. You should start conversation practice from day one, even with very limited vocabulary and grammar. For absolute beginners, start with simple exchanges. Practice introducing yourself, saying hello and goodbye, talking about basic topics like weather, food, or family. Use simple present tense sentences and don't worry about complex grammar. The key is to start speaking immediately, even if your sentences are very basic. You can practice with language exchange partners, conversation apps, or even by talking to yourself in English. The goal isn't perfection, it's building comfort with using English for real communication.
That's such encouraging advice. Starting immediately rather than waiting to feel ready makes so much sense. Sophie, what about students who have some English knowledge but freeze up when they try to have conversations?
This is incredibly common, and it's usually caused by overthinking and perfectionism. These students often have good grammar and vocabulary knowledge, but they get paralyzed trying to construct perfect sentences in their heads before speaking. My advice is to embrace imperfection and focus on communication over accuracy. Practice responding quickly without self-editing. If you make a mistake, just continue talking rather than stopping to correct yourself. Use simple sentences instead of trying to impress with complex grammar. Learn some conversation fillers like, well, or let me think to give yourself time to organize your thoughts while keeping the conversation flowing. Remember that native speakers make mistakes and use imperfect grammar all the time in casual conversation.
Those conversation fillers sound really useful for buying time while thinking. Sophie, how can learners find opportunities to practice conversations when they don't have English-speaking friends or live in non-English-speaking countries?
This is a challenge many of my students face, but there are actually numerous opportunities available today thanks to technology and online communities. Language exchange websites and apps connect you with native English speakers who want to learn your language. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Online conversation clubs and English learning communities offer group practice sessions. Video calling platforms allow you to join conversation groups from anywhere in the world. Social media groups focused on English learning often have voice chat sessions. You can also practice with AI chatbots or language learning apps that include speaking practice. Even practicing conversations with yourself, narrating your daily activities, having imaginary conversations, or practicing responses to common questions is valuable preparation for real interactions.
Technology really has opened up so many possibilities for conversation practice. Sophie, what are some effective conversation topics for different skill levels?
Topic selection is crucial for successful conversation practice. For beginners, stick to personal and concrete topics. Family, hobbies, daily routines, favorite foods, hometown, work or studies, and simple preferences like favorite colors or movies. These topics use basic vocabulary and allow for simple sentence structures. For intermediate learners, expand to more complex topics like travel experiences, cultural differences, future plans, opinions about current events, hypothetical situations, and abstract concepts like happiness or success. Advanced learners can tackle complex social issues, professional topics, philosophical questions, and nuanced cultural discussions. The key is choosing topics that you're genuinely interested in and have opinions about. Passion and interest make conversations more natural and engaging.
Having genuine interest in the topic definitely makes conversations more enjoyable. Sophie, how important is listening in conversation practice? Many learners focus so much on what they're going to say that they don't listen well to the other person.
Listening is absolutely fundamental to good conversation skills. Conversation is not just about speaking, it's about interactive communication, which requires excellent listening skills. Good listeners can respond appropriately, ask relevant follow-up questions, and build on what the other person has said. Poor listening leads to disconnected conversations where people talk past each other rather than with each other. Practice active listening by focusing completely on the speaker, asking clarifying questions when you don't understand, and summarizing or paraphrasing what you've heard to confirm understanding. Learn to listen for both content and emotion, what the person is saying and how they feel about it. This makes your responses more natural and appropriate.
Active listening really does make conversations flow better. Sophie, what role does body language and nonverbal communication play in English conversations?
Body language and nonverbal communication are huge parts of effective conversation, especially in English-speaking cultures. Eye contact shows interest and engagement. In most English-speaking countries, maintaining appropriate eye contact demonstrates that you're listening and engaged in the conversation. Facial expressions should match your words, smiling when saying something positive, looking concerned when discussing problems. Gestures can help emphasize points and make your communication more dynamic. Personal space varies by culture, but in most English-speaking contexts, standing too close can make people uncomfortable, while standing too far away can seem unfriendly. Nodding shows understanding and encouragement. Learning these nonverbal cues helps you communicate more effectively and understand others better, even when you miss some spoken words.
Those nonverbal aspects really do add so much to communication. Sophie, how can learners develop natural conversation flow and learn to take turns appropriately in discussions?
Natural conversation flow is an art that improves with practice and observation. Learn common transition phrases that help move conversations smoothly from topic to topic. Phrases like, speaking of which, that reminds me, by the way, or on a different note. Practice turn-taking by learning to recognize when someone is finishing their thought and when they're just pausing. Watch for verbal and nonverbal cues that someone wants to speak. They might lean forward, open their mouth, or make a small sound. Learn polite ways to enter conversations. Excuse me, if I may add something, or I have a thought about that. Also, learn how to give others opportunities to speak by asking questions like, what do you think? Or have you had a similar experience? Good conversation is like a tennis match. The focus should go back and forth between participants.
That tennis match analogy is perfect. Conversations really should be balanced exchanges. Sophie, what about dealing with misunderstandings or communication breakdowns during conversations?
Misunderstandings are completely normal in conversations, even between native speakers. The key is learning to handle them gracefully and use them as learning opportunities. When you don't understand something, don't just nod and pretend you understood, ask for clarification politely. Use phrases like, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Could you repeat that, please? Or, what do you mean by? When someone doesn't understand you, don't get frustrated. Try explaining in a different way. Use simpler words or give examples. Learn to paraphrase and rephrase your ideas. Sometimes drawing pictures or using gestures can help clarify meaning. Remember that successful communication is a shared responsibility. Both speakers should work together to ensure understanding.
Those are such practical strategies for handling communication challenges. Sophie, how can learners practice specific conversation skills like asking questions, expressing opinions, or making small talk?
Each conversation skill can be practiced systematically. For asking questions, practice the different types. Yes, no questions for basic information, open-ended questions for deeper discussion, and follow-up questions to show interest. Learn question words thoroughly. Who, what, when, where, why, how, and practice using them naturally. For expressing opinions, learn polite ways to introduce your views. I think, in my opinion, from my perspective, it seems to me. Practice agreeing and disagreeing politely with phrases like, I completely agree, or I see your point, but for small talk, memorize common topics and typical questions about weather, current events, hobbies, or weekend plans. Practice both asking and answering these common small talk questions until they become automatic.
Having those conversation skills ready automatically would definitely boost confidence. Sophie, what about pronunciation and accent concerns? Many learners worry that their accent will prevent good conversations.
I want to reassure learners that having an accent is completely normal and acceptable. Native English speakers have different accents too: British, American, Australian, and many regional variations. The goal isn't to sound exactly like a native speaker from a specific region. The goal is clear communication. Focus on pronunciation that helps you be understood rather than trying to eliminate your accent entirely. Work on common pronunciation problems that might interfere with understanding, like distinguishing between similar sounds or stressing the right syllables in words. Practice speaking clearly and at an appropriate pace. Most importantly, don't let accent anxiety prevent you from having conversations. People are usually very patient and appreciative when you're making an effort to communicate in their language.
That's such an important mindset shift, focusing on clear communication rather than perfect accent. Sophie, how can learners build confidence and overcome anxiety about conversation practice?
Building conversation confidence is a gradual process that requires patience and consistent practice. Start with low-pressure situations. Practice with patient friends, join beginner conversation groups, or talk with other English learners who understand your challenges. Prepare for conversations by thinking about likely topics and practicing responses to common questions. Set realistic goals. Don't expect to have perfect conversations immediately. Celebrate small successes, like successfully asking a question or keeping a conversation going for a few minutes. Learn from mistakes rather than dwelling on them. Every error is a learning opportunity. Remember that most people are understanding and helpful when they know you're learning English. The more you practice, the more natural and confident you'll become.
Those confidence-building strategies are so encouraging. Sophie, what role does culture play in English conversations? How can learners navigate cultural differences?
Cultural awareness is crucial for successful English conversations. Different cultures have different norms for topics, directness, formality, and social interaction. In many English-speaking cultures, people appreciate directness and honesty, but there are polite ways to express disagreement or criticism. Small talk is very important in cultures like the United States and Britain. It's not just meaningless chatter, it's a way of building relationships and showing social skills. Learn about appropriate topics for different situations. Some topics might be fine with friends, but inappropriate with colleagues or strangers. Observe how native speakers interact in different contexts and ask questions when you're unsure about cultural norms. Remember that making cultural mistakes is normal for language learners, and most people will be patient and helpful in explaining their cultural expectations.
Cultural awareness really does add that important layer to successful communication. Sophie, How can learners practice conversations that prepare them for specific situations like job interviews, social events, or academic discussions?
Situational conversation practice is incredibly valuable. For job interviews, practice common interview questions, learn how to describe your experience and qualifications, and practice asking intelligent questions about the position and company. For social events, work on introductions, small talk, and finding common interests with new people. Practice both initiating conversations and responding when others approach you. For academic discussions, learn how to express and support opinions, ask for clarification, and participate in group discussions respectfully. Role playing these specific situations with conversation partners helps you feel prepared and confident when the real situations arise. You can also watch videos of these situations to observe natural language patterns and social behaviors.
That targeted practice for specific situations sounds incredibly practical. Sophie, what mistakes do you see learners making that actually hurt their conversation progress?
Several common mistakes can slow conversation progress significantly. First, perfectionism. Students who refuse to speak until they can do it perfectly never develop fluency. Second, over-preparation. Some students try to memorize entire conversations instead of learning to think spontaneously in English. Third, avoiding challenging conversations. Staying only with easy topics and comfortable partners limits growth. Fourth, focusing too much on grammar rules during conversations instead of focusing on communication. Fifth, not listening actively to conversation partners and missing opportunities to respond naturally. Sixth, comparing themselves to native speakers instead of focusing on their own progress. Finally, giving up too quickly when conversations become difficult instead of pushing through challenging moments where real learning happens.
Those are important mistakes to be aware of and avoid. Sophie, before we finish, what's your most important advice for learners who want to improve their English conversation skills?
My most important advice is to start speaking today, regardless of your current level, and to prioritize consistent practice over perfect performance. Conversation skills develop through doing, not through studying about doing. Find every opportunity to use English in real communication with native speakers, other learners, language exchange partners, or even yourself. Be patient with the process and celebrate incremental improvements. Remember that every native speaker was once a beginner too, and everyone appreciates the effort you're making to communicate in their language. Most importantly, focus on connection and communication rather than perfection. Great conversations happen when people connect with each other, share ideas, and enjoy the interaction. And that can happen at any English level with the right attitude and practice.
That's such inspiring and practical advice, Sophie. Thank you so much for sharing these wonderful strategies for improving English conversation skills. I think our listeners now have a clear understanding of how to approach conversation practice effectively.
Thank you, Aurora. This has been such an enjoyable conversation, which is exactly what English learning should be. I hope your listeners feel excited and confident about practicing their conversation skills. Remember, every conversation is an opportunity to improve, connect with others, and enjoy the wonderful experience of communicating across languages and cultures.
And thank you to all our listeners. Remember, conversation practice isn't something you do after you learn English. It's how you learn English. Start having conversations today, be patient with yourself, and focus on the joy of connecting with other people through English. Every conversation makes you a better English speaker.
Exactly. Don't wait for someday when you feel ready. That someday is today. Every person you meet is a potential conversation partner and teacher. Embrace the adventure of English conversation and enjoy the journey of becoming a confident English communicator.
Until next time, this is Aurora from English Learning Conversations. Keep talking, keep connecting, and remember that every conversation brings you closer to fluency. Your voice matters, and the world is waiting to hear what you have to say in English. Goodbye, everyone.
Happy conversing, everyone. May all your English conversations be meaningful, enjoyable, and confidence building.